Will you want to ask Miss questions, Miss Sheila?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay.
I might end up saying something, but...
Okay. This is Jessica Taylor interviewing Jack Jennings on August 31st, 2013 at 8:10 p.m. Mr. Jennings, can you please state your full name?
Jack Lee Jennings.
Where were you born?
I was born in Franklin, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and when?
August 16th, 1948.
Okay. Did you grow up in a military family?
Not really. I guess, back then everybody had to serve. My dad was in World War II. My uncle was in World War II, and my other uncle was in the Army. Had another uncle who was in World War II. So, they served.
Mm-hmm.
They served.
What branch of the military was your father?
My dad was in the Navy.
Mm-hmm. What was his theater?
World War II.
But what part of the world was he?
Oh, he was on a ship, and he was out on the sea a lot of the times. I don't know if he ever, was on land except for when they had to land and, do whatever they have to do when they come into port.
Absolutely. So how did you join the armed forces?
Well, I graduated from high school when I was 17, and I didn't have the grades nor the money to go to college. At least I didn't think I did. I don't know, they probably had loans. But I was tired of school, and I knew I had to fulfill my military obligation, because back then you had to you either joined or you got drafted. So I went ahead and joined right out of high school when I was 17.
Okay. What branch were you?
Well, I was in the United States Marine Corps.
Wow.
I tried to join the Navy because I didn't want to shoot anybody or get shot at. I wasn't into that at all. But the Navy was full. They were backed up for a couple months, so I said, okay, I'll wait. And in the meantime, a couple weeks later, the Marine recruiter called me and talked me into joining. Wasn't hard, 17.
What did your family think of you joining the military?
My mom was devastated. She did not want me to. She was very protective, and I was her first son. She had me when she was young, She was almost 18, just before her 18th birthday.
Wow.
So I was her little baby, and she was heartbroken when I decided to join. She wouldn't sign for me because you had to have a parent's signature. My dad agreed to sign. I asked him to, and he said, okay. He said, you'll probably hate me later on, but I'll go ahead and sign it if that's what you want, Jack. So he did, and I left.
So where did you end up going to boot camp?
I went to Parris Island, South Carolina. They had 2 boot camps, one in Parris Island, the other out in San Diego, California at that time.
Mm-hmm. And what was that like?
Oh, it was hell. It was just unbelievable. I had no idea it was going to be so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just ran us ragged and treated us mean. And I always hated my DI. I swore if I ever saw him that I would walk up and punch him. Years later, not then, because I'd get in trouble if I ever saw him later. But once I got to Vietnam, I realized why he was so mean. He was trying to make us tough, because we were kids. We were just young kids, and we didn't really know what we were getting into. We didn't understand. When you're young, you feel like you're kind of invincible. You don't think about what can happen because you feel so strong and so young, and just you're fearless. But when I got to Nam, I realized why. Staff Sergeant Burns, that was the DI. I realized why he was such a prick. He wanted us to be tough, trying to toughen us up is all.
Did it work? Did it change you as a person?
Well, it made you mentally tougher, because you learned to handle adversity and being called names and, you know, being pushed to the limit. You learn to do that. So, you know, it was a weird way to do it, but I understood later.
Wow. What was your military occupation specialty? Did you have one?
Yes, I did. I was administrative. I was an admin man. Everybody's a rifleman, 0311 rifleman, but then they send you to specialty schools for a job. And when I was in high school, my buddy Chris Whitman said we were getting ready to register for classes, and he said, "Hey Jack, let's take typing." And I said, "That's for girls." And he went, "Yeah." And I realized we'd be in with all the girls. So we took it and we had a blast, and I learned how to type. So when I got in, they made me a clerk. Of course, I was still a rifleman, but that was my specialty. Saved my life, taking that typing class, I think, because I would have been I was with the grunts, but I wasn't out in the bush all the time. You know, I had to stand perimeter watch and go on patrols around our base camp, but I wasn't out in the bush for extended periods of time like my brothers were, my friends. I saw more of the horror of the war in their eyes when they'd come back than I did with my own eyes. I mean, I saw some stuff, but not like they did. I'd see it in their eyes. I saw them change from week to week, or they'd go out for anywhere between a week and 3 weeks, and they'd come back, and I saw them change. I could see the horror in their eyes, and they didn't even have to say anything. You know, they'd talk a little bit, but mainly it was just, man, we got to get out of here.
How did that affect you?
Well, being back as a clerk, it made me feel guilty. But I wasn't brave enough to volunteer to go out. I stayed there because, like I said, I wasn't brave enough to say, I want to go out there. They probably would have sent me if I'd have demanded it. But, and I felt guilty for years. And for surviving, you know, I felt like, wow, man, I didn't do what they did. But I was there. We had incoming rockets coming in and stuff. But I wasn't out traipsing around hunting for Charlie like they were.
Just stop me if I'm shoving it to you too hard. But why would you associate that with bravery necessarily?
By saying, send me out there? Well, it just seemed like if I'm a Marine, I should be out there doing what everybody else was, but I was lucky enough to be a clerk. So I was the guy that typed the letters to the mamas and wives of the guy that got killed. And a lot of times I knew him. And it just seemed to me as a Marine, the brave thing to do would say, hey, send me out there with everybody else. But I was lucky, and I was afraid to do it, I'll admit.
Did you ever say anything special in the letters that you sent to families?
You know, they were kind of like form letters. They had a letter saying the same thing, basically. And you just put in a name and change a few words, but it was your son arrived bravely and fighting for his country. They didn't go into details in those letters.
Once you get to Vietnam, how did you understand the rules of engagement? I understand that you weren't out on the front lines the whole time, but
we were basically trying to find the enemy and destroy him. That was our mission, basically.
So there were no rules per se.
I don't remember any specific rules.
Do you think it would have been different if there were rules that either the Americans or the Viet Cong followed as far as basically war crimes goes?
Well, I think there were rules, but I'm just not real familiar with them.
That's totally fine. Do you receive any decorations?
I got nothing special. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a Vietnam combat ribbon and a Vietnam campaign ribbon with 2 stars, meaning they have cutoff dates, and my period of service branched both of them, or was in 2 of them, so I got 2 stars.
Mhm.
That seems special, huh?
It does to me.
Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't there.
What was your opinion of the war before you went?
Before I went, they taught us in history class, or POD class in high school. As a senior, I think we had that, I'm pretty sure. And POD was an acronym for Problems of Democracy. And that's what they taught in my high school. I'm not sure what category it fell into. But anyway, they told us that we had to go to Vietnam because some of us asked questions, why are we in Vietnam? And the teacher said, well, they're trying to spread communism from North Vietnam down to South Vietnam, and they're taking over the country and making people live under communism. And if we don't stop it here, they might come to our soil, to our shores, and try to take us over. So I thought, wow, guess we better do this.
So thinking back to high school and just conversations that you would have with people more experienced than yourself as a high schooler, what were you told about the Vietnamese people, or just the entire continent of Asia?
I wasn't told much really, other than that they were the enemy and that the people in the South needed our help. And, you know, I didn't really think about it. I was only 17 when I joined.
Right. What did you think when Nixon took office?
I wasn't really politically aware. I wasn't a good citizen as far as being politically aware. I was just a kid.
Okay.
Having fun, trying to have fun, trying to get through life.
When did you come out of Vietnam? What year?
1969, March of 1969. I went there in February 1968.
Okay.
13-month tour, which is the standard tour for Marines at that point
Okay.
during the war.
Did your time in Vietnam change how you felt about the war or about politics in America?
Yes, after I was there for about, I guess it was probably 4 or 5 months, I started to feel like the war was wrong, at least the way we were fighting it, because it seems like we'd take an area and we'd lose guys killed and wounded, and then we'd abandon that area, and then a few months later, a couple of months later, we'd go back to the same area and have to retake it and lose more guys, wounded bad and killed. It just didn't seem right. I turned 18. I was 18. No, I was 19 when I made it to Nam, because I was in the States for about a year and a half. But as a 19-year-old person, it just didn't seem sensible to what we were doing. So I started turning against the war. I wasn't gung-ho anymore. I still kept trying to do the best I could and fighting. Like I say, I wasn't out on the front, but I wasn't really in the rear. Our base camp was out there. Like I say, we had rockets coming in, and we stood perimeter watch. That's at night, where you're around the perimeter, make sure that nobody tries to come in, infiltrate us. And we got shot at out there and shot back. But it just didn't seem right, and I started thinking, man, I'm just going to keep fighting just to get home and to help my brothers get home. But I wasn't supportive of the mission. I didn't understand the mission anymore. I was confused.
Are there any other key moments that stick out during the time that you were in Vietnam that really altered who you are as a person or altered your life?
Well, there were some guys I knew that got killed, and that hit me pretty hard. And, you know, I had never really seen death, as far as violent death before. And I didn't see them get killed, but just knowing that they were dead, you know, it kind of shook me up.
Absolutely. So how did Vietnam, the experience of it, change you as a person?
Well, it made me not want to be violent anymore. After the war, I didn't want to. Like one time I went hunting with my friends when I got home, and I had a deer in my sights and I couldn't shoot it. I didn't want to shoot it, I should say, so I didn't.
Wow.
Now, if I'd have needed food on the table, I would have shot the deer, but we didn't need it that bad, so I just said. They thought I was. They didn't say much though. They didn't say a whole lot. They didn't get on me or anything.
Yeah.
Say, "What's the matter with you, pussy?" or anything like that.
What was readjustment like for you? How were you received?
Man, this is why I didn't want to do this.
Do you want me to stop? I can stop.
Can you for a second?
Yeah, let's do that.